There is a direct correlation between our emotional traumas and physical ailments. I actually have brought with me, so that when I finish you will be able to take a look at it, 2 copies of the book Messages from the Body. And this is mostly used by coaches and therapists and so forth, in helping people look at their ailments and looking at what could, in their past, in their subconscious mind, cause some of these ailments. So on the handout I gave you, I put a little graphic. And I always start out with, what is the reason that we should forgive? Why bother to forgive in the first place? Some people will say peace of mind. Some people will say, so you can be free. Some people will say, so you can move on, and a lot of other reasons. My primary reason, the thing that I like best to say to people, is because your life depends on it. Your life depends on forgiveness. Holding unforgiveness is like taking poison, expecting the other person to die. So why do I say this? Well, Caroline Myss gives a wonderful analogy, and Colin Tipping has created this diagram. He's the author of Radical Forgiveness, Making Room for the Miracle. And Caroline Myss says that in our lives and each and every moment of the day, we are taking in enough energy, enough healing energy, enough quantum energy, enough life force to heal any condition of mind or body. But why is it then that when a condition shows up in our lives, we're unable to facilitate a healing? We receive enough life force to heal this condition. We receive enough life force to heal the condition of tuberculosis or any other condition. But something happens as we move through life, starting from age 0 forward, because it can even begin in utero. Conditionings of our lives cause us to experience traumatic situations that cause an emotional toxin to be released into our minds first, and then imprinted in our bodies upon those 150 trillion cells. 60 to 70% of our life force is siphoned off to hold on to the traumas of the past. We call those our victim and perpetrator stories, where someone treats us badly, we become the victim, and we take on the emotional energy of the feeling of being a victim. That emotional energy then sends a signal into our bodies and goes to those 150 trillion cells, which has an outer covering, which is a receiving and transmitting device. That emotional trauma is imprinted on that outer covering, which is the mind of the cell. Those signals then transmit to all of the body through the bloodstream, and then takes a root in some organ of the body that is in alignment with what we have experienced. Another 20 to 30% of that life force is siphoned off to hold on to what might happen in the future. If I lose my house, if I lose my job, if my relationship doesn't work, if I don't find a relationship. Those we call our what-if stories. What if this happens to me? And what if I can't do anything about it? And so it leaves very little of that life force that is present here and now to heal the conditions of our body. So what do we do about it? The most important thing is to be able to recognize when we have a serious ailment, even a psychosomatic one. Dr. Deepak Chopra says that we have to give equal attention to the so-called psychosomatic illnesses because they too come from the mental toxins that come about as a result of our emotional reactions to things that occur in our lives. So that they should be treated, both the real illness that is able to be diagnosed as well as the psychosomatic. And so the first thing is to recognize I am experiencing X, Y, Z. Then to determine what is the root cause of this particular ailment. Where does it start in my life experience? What emotional trauma have I had that caused me to imprint a toxic condition upon my energy? So I'll just give you a couple of examples. And as I said, you can have an opportunity to look at these books when we're finished. Caroline Myss says that when someone is diagnosed with breast cancer, the key is to ask them what happened 5 to 7 years before you were diagnosed. And 9 times out of 10, and in my coaching practice, I have seen it 100% of the time, that person will have had a traumatically heartbreaking experience that has created itself as a sore on the heart. And where is the heart? It is in the area of the breast. Even men have breast cancer, in case you didn't know that. Okay. Another example is a man who has prostate cancer. If you ask that man what happened 5 to 7 years before you were diagnosed that caused you to feel emasculated, that diminished your malehood, that made you feel like less than a man, you will probably find a correlation between prostate cancer and that emotional trauma. So what's this about? It's knowledge. If I know that I have a certain condition and I have looked to discover what the correlation is as far as emotion, I can then begin to do some healing work. And Caroline Myss, Deepak Chopra, Colin Tipping, Dr. Fred Allen Wolfe, they all say the same thing. The key to healing is forgiveness. The key to healing is forgiveness. Forgiveness at a deep level where you release the hold that that particular trauma has had on you. And we tend to hold on to the past in a very strong way. I usually do a thing where I carry luggage when I do a talk on forgiveness, and I walk in with luggage, and I say to people, this is all of the situations that you've been carrying around that you have been unwilling to forgive. You are carrying them around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are having breakfast with you. They are taking a shower with you. They're going to work with you. You're putting them in your car and, of course, strapping them in to their seat belts because there is a seatbelt law. You're taking them into your jobs. You're bringing them back home with you at night, and you're sleeping with them in your bed. If you've ever run into anyone who has sleep disorders, a good dose of forgiving things of the past will help them sleep very soundly at night. So how do we do this forgiveness? Well, we can do traditional forgiveness, but traditional forgiveness is very difficult because you have conflicting methods. You have the desire to forgive, but you have the need to condemn, so they cancel each other out. You have the extraordinary forgiveness, which is the Oprah Winfrey effect. This is someone who has forgiven something that most of us feel we could never forgive. But for some reason, they were able to let go of that thing immediately, like the mother who forgives the guy who killed her son and is now being his surrogate mother because he said he didn't have a mother. But for the rest of us, there is this radical forgiveness. And radical forgiveness is a step-by-step process. Deepak Chopra says forgiveness is something that takes time because you have to do it layer by layer by layer. It took many years to get to holding on to the toxins of the past. It's going to take a little time to undo what we've been carrying. So it is a step-by-step process, but all it requires is the willingness to do so. The willingness to do so. And you can be willing to be willing, but if there is the slightest amount of willingness, the universe will support you in rising up to have it be so. So we start with recognizing that we're carrying the unforgiveness, and then we find tools that support us in clearing the toxins, the emotional imprint of what we have held on to. The Course in Miracles says we live in the present as if it were the past and project it into the future, making it one continuous stream of experience. So in other words, we're never really in the now. We're usually in this moment, and we're judging it by something that happened before. And therefore, when that something that happens before causes a trauma in our emotions, we then project it into our future. And therefore, the experience is continually pulling us into pain and suffering. Pain and suffering. We will experience pains in life. That's inevitable. But suffering is optional. And we can choose not to suffer by being willing to let go of the pain of the past, freeing ourselves from what we've been carrying. Look, forgiveness is not condoning, not at all. We can actually decide to extract ourselves from the people or the situations, even be on the other side of the planet. Our only job is to forgive, to be willing to let it go and free ourselves, because forgiveness is the gift we give ourselves. So the people who show up in our lives are mirroring for us what we're carrying around. So they're not bad people, so to speak. They are really healing angels, because if they didn't show up and act a certain way, you wouldn't even know that something bothered you, right? So once you forgive, you can move yourself away from them and get your lesson, and you're free. Radical forgiveness is saying that there is nothing to forgive because nothing wrong happened in the first place. Take a deep breath. I know. I wasn't going there, but you did it. And the reason is because this is a soul journey, my darlings. We are growing and learning. We're evolving. We're here fulfilling a purpose, and we are not victims of random acts of being in the right place at the right time or the wrong place at the wrong time, or of having good luck or bad luck. Our lives are purposeful and have meaning. There is a meaning to everything we experience. And if we look for that meaning, if we look for the lesson, the blessing, the gift, we will find it and we are free, because then we can be grateful for what has happened. So therefore, nothing wrong happened in the first place. But it works. It works. And I'm going to give you, I know I'm running out of time, but one last example of how this works. My biological father was only in my life periodically. And he married again, and I would go to visit. And my experience there was very painful, very traumatic. When his wife would be abusive toward me, he would get in the bed and cover his head up. Now, at home where I live, I had a stepfather who adored me, who treated me like a princess. So for many years, I was attempting to please men in order to have them treat me like my stepfather did. And so I gave away my power over and over and over and over. It was like being a middle child, okay? And so when I got into radical forgiveness, I did my forgiveness work on my father, on my biological father. And I had an opportunity recently to go to a family reunion where he lives. And I had done all this forgiveness work, and I would think about him, I would see his picture, and I had no emotion. But when I was getting ready to go, I started writing down the questions I wanted answered. I'm going to get these questions answered. Why this? Why that? Why? Why is a victim question. So I hadn't done the forgiveness work. When I got there and I went upstairs to his room and I saw him, there was this frail little 90-year-old man. And I went over to him, and all of a sudden my heart broke wide open. I hugged him, and all of a sudden the questions all disappeared. And he hugged me and he said, "You are my blessing, you are my blessing, you are my blessing." And I said, "I love you." And I knew I meant it, and I knew I was done.